Hi, I'm Jay Link, President of Stewardship Ministries. One of the most misunderstood passages in the Bible is found in Jesus' Sermon on the Mount when He discusses giving. Here is what He actually says in Matthew 6, 1 through 4. Beware of practicing your righteousness before other people in order to be seen by them, for then you will have no reward from your Father who is in heaven. Thus, when you give to the needy, sound no trumpet before you as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and in the streets, that they may be praised by others. Truly, I say to you, they have received their reward. But when you give to the needy, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving may be in secret, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you. A common misunderstanding of what Jesus is teaching here has led many believers to conclude that unless your giving is entirely anonymous, you will receive no reward from the Lord for your gifts. I once heard a gentleman who was sharing his giving testimony, and he acknowledged that by sharing it, he would likely now lose his reward. Some people have taken this misbelief about anonymous giving so seriously that they only give cash to their church so as to make it impossible for anyone to trace their giving. Is this what Jesus is teaching? I think not. In fact, I think we will have missed Jesus' point entirely if that is what we conclude. It is good to remember that chapters 5 through 7 are one sermon. We must not ignore the rest of what Jesus says. Context here is key. I think there are three important lessons about giving we can draw from Jesus' sermon. First, He teaches us to give. We must not overlook the obvious. Jesus tells us when you give, He does not say if you give. Giving is an expected and commanded part of being a follower of Jesus. His teaching here begins with the assumption that every follower of Jesus will be giving. He then addresses the dangers and pitfalls you must avoid when you do your giving. I fear many immature and non-giving believers, and there are a huge number of them, use this passage as a way to not give and keep their non-giving a secret. If ever confronted with what they're giving, they can hide behind this passage that their giving is a secret. I once asked a church body this question: do you think if the giving records of each member of the church were posted on the bulletin board, anyone would be embarrassed by the other members knowing what their giving was? We never did it, of course, but it does point out how many believers will hide behind this teaching to cover up their lack of generosity. Secondly, He teaches us to give purely. The point that Jesus is really trying to make here is about our giving motives. He says that we should never do our giving in order to be seen by them, and consequently, we will be praised by others. In other words, we do not want to give because what we might get from it, like others having elevated thoughts of us or making complimentary comments about us, or us receiving some special treatment because of our giving. Jesus is saying that if your motive for giving is to draw attention to yourself, and you accomplish that, you received the reward you wanted. It is not so important whether your giving is known by others. It is more important to know how and why your giving was made known to others. If you study Jesus' entire sermon, you will see the progression of His message. In the last half of chapter 5, verses 21 through 48, He emphasizes inner moral righteousness and provides us with 6 specific illustrations of murder, adultery, divorce, oaths, revenge, and love. Then, in the first 18 verses of this 6th chapter, He emphasizes outward formal righteousness and gives us 3 representative illustrations of typical religious activities, that being giving, praying, and fasting. These 3 activities are all connected in the flow of His message. It is important to understand this because Jesus also teaches us to go into our closet, Matthew 6:6 in the King James Version, to pray and not to do it publicly. Isn't it interesting that we stringently believe our giving ought to be the ultimate private act, yet we do not apply the secrecy doctrine to prayer, even though Jesus' teaching on both of these practices are almost identical? He even adds one additional common religious practice of the day, one that might be good for us to revisit, when he tells us that your fasting may not be seen by others, but by your Father who's in secret, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you. 6:18. Do you see the repetitiveness in each of these three illustrations? Do something with pure motives and do not seek to be seen or admired by others. Then God, who knows the true motives of your heart, will reward you in your giving, praying, and fasting. Why do we put giving in a different category from the other two? Giving needs to be private, but we don't hesitate to ask people to audibly pray and be heard by others. Let me also add that if anonymous giving is the only proper way to give, how is it that not only was Jesus able to watch people giving in their offerings in Luke 21:1-4, He was so close to the offering box that He could actually see the amount the widow gave. He praises the amount of her gift, making it public, using it as a lesson to challenge His disciples and countless millions of believers through the ages. So much for anonymous giving. Jesus Himself blew her cover. Did she lose her reward because of it? I think not. Additionally, if giving was meant to be secret, why are we told about the many believers who gave in Acts chapter 2, verse 45, and also Barnabas and others who gave, recorded in Acts 4:32-37? All this was public knowledge and even recorded by Luke for all future believers to know about. You see, it's not about secrecy, it's about motive. We should be motivated to give as an act of personal worship and not so we might be praised and honored by others for what we have given. If that is the motive, then that person has received his reward. Thirdly, He teaches us to give purely to glorify God and to motivate others. Jesus' sermon also teaches us what the proper motivation for our giving and good works should be. In 5:6, Jesus says, "In the same way, let your light shine before others so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven." If we keep our giving and good works under a bushel, as it says in 5:15, a secret, thinking that this is what Jesus wants, how can we obey this part of the sermon? We are told here to let our light, our giving and our good works, shine before others so that they may see our good works. Taken at face value, it seems that Jesus is contradicting Himself. We must understand that Jesus is addressing the giver's motive, to give glory to your Father who is in heaven, and not who knows about the good gift. If in our giving and doing good, we always seek to deflect the praise and the glory for our giving from ourselves, as it says in 6:1-4, and focus it on God, as it says in 5:16, acknowledging that every good thing given and every perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights, as it says in James 1:17, we are being obedient to both passages. If we readily seek to deflect the praise from our known giving to the Father, then we will always be safe from others thinking more highly of us than they should. Romans 12:3. Let me also suggest a second healthy motivation for actually making your giving known. Hebrews 10:24 tells us, "Let us consider how to stimulate one another to love and good deeds." I can think of no more compelling reason to make our giving known to others than in so doing to challenge other believers to step up their level of generosity and experience the joy and blessing that comes from increased giving. Just think how much poorer we would be if the likes of J.C. Penney and R.G. Letourneau, who both gave away 90% of their massive incomes during their lifetimes, would have never let us know what they were doing. Or what about Stanley Tam, the author of the book God Owns My Business, or Alan Barnhart, who have both given their entire companies away to the Lord, choosing to live on modest salaries and funneling millions of dollars of company profits into kingdom causes worldwide on an annual basis? What about all the Bible characters who fill the pages of Scripture, who inspire and challenges us to greater levels of sacrificial giving? What if they would have all kept it a secret? What a loss for us. So Jesus' message about giving is both clear and simple. Number 1, give. Number 2, give purely. And number 3, give purely to glorify God and motivate others. Rather than concern yourself with who is aware of your giving, instead focus on who will be glorified by your giving and who might be inspired to join you in your giving adventures. So, if your motives are pure, go ahead and let your light so shine before others so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven. The more who are blessed and inspired by your giving, the better.